Before I start talking, I'm going to issue what I suppose is now called a trigger warning. From the start, I'm going to talk about suicide and I'm going to talk about addiction. So I'll give it sort of 10 seconds if anyone wants to nip out for 5 minutes in case they find that uncomfortable. That's fine. Jim's right. I'm very, I'll say it how it is, okay? So I'm just warning you now that I will say it how it is. Okay, so every story has a beginning, and the beginning of my kind of story of recovery, which is what you're going to find out about tonight, starts with what is the first chapter in Bergh therapy called a breakdown, a buzzard and the broads, and I'm going to talk you through each of those quickly to tell you who I am and what my background is, so you kind of understand where I'm coming from for the rest of the talk. So that's me, and I think this has got a laser pointer. Yeah, here you go. So if we look on the left, that's me about 11 years ago. About an hour after that picture was taken, I tried to take my own life. And I think the clear point here is there's a difference between knowing and wanting to not be here anymore, but also knowing that you kind of want someone to stop you and help you. And I was in a position where I told someone and then went and acted on what I was thinking, and that person thankfully came and stopped me. But I think if you look at my eyes in the picture, they're quite telling of kind of how I felt generally at the time. It's quite a ghostly expression, I think. So yeah, this is at the height of my addiction phase, because my life seems to run in phases. And I'm quite open about the fact that I'm a recovering alcoholic. I've been sober for 7 years. You don't have to clap. I'm clapping myself. I literally am like completely sober. I haven't touched any form of alcohol. I actually don't like the smell of it anymore, which is a bit weird. But yeah, so I drank every day, and I drank a lot every day, and I drank to function at work, and I hid it from people that were close to me. My wife has only recently discovered, around when we got married, the actual extent of how things were at that point, because we'd only just got together. And I'm not ashamed of it, because I think it shapes who I am and what I do for a job, which is teach young people with special educational needs. I think it puts me in a unique position to be able to relate to some of the things that they experience. However, you know, I very easily could not be here right now, so not great to reflect on. I'll be honest with you, I don't normally find it difficult to look at these pictures because they're normally on a much smaller screen. But seeing them in such glory, so to speak, is quite stark. Picture on the right. Anyone that's read Bergh Therapy, I talk about an experience that happened in 2013 where I was out drinking at Norwich Beer Festival. And after the beer festival, I went to a pub and bumped into someone who knew my dad. Now, I don't have a relationship of any sort with my dad. My dad was a domestic abuser, and my mum fled from him with me when I was 4 years old. It's been very difficult navigating life without a father, for obvious reasons. And I bumped into a chap that knew my dad when he was younger and was telling me how amazing he was and trying to process the opposite of what you believe when you've been brought up to think something otherwise, and also being like really drunk and having taken loads of cocaine. I'm just being honest with you. Doesn't really work in your head, and it triggered a nervous breakdown, which was pretty horrific actually. I don't think I really realised the effect it had on me, and my wife has talked to me in recent years about sort of how bad it was, like the physical side of having a breakdown, lots of manic movements and weirdness. Actually that hasn't changed that much, but yeah, so it was a really difficult time, but it was also a really important time because it meant I took some time off work. And what I did to pass the time was jigsaws. Yeah, we all love jigsaws. Yeah. So doing jigsaws, doing those really hard ones, wasgage, yeah? So you can't actually see the picture on the box. You have to work out what the people are looking at or what the reverse of the image is. Great, getting really into it, 1,000-piece jigsaws, done one, do another one. Still about 6,000-piece jigsaws at home during the week. And I said to my wife, I'm getting a bit bored of jigsaws. She says, you should go out for a walk. Here comes light bulb moment, okay? I go out for a walk, I've started taking sertraline. It's an antidepressant that raises the level of, oh God, I can't even remember what it's called now. Thank you. In your brain. They're from the family of drugs called selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs. Okay, so increase the level gradually, but that's actually like taking Class A drugs when you first start taking it. So just process that. I'm trying not to do things like that anymore because I need to make wholesale changes to my life, and then I take something which has the same effect. Doesn't really make any sense. But anyway, they do really help. I'll be really clear that birdwatching isn't the only thing I've done to help with my mental health. I've done lots of other things, and one of those is take medication, which I still take now, so that's 9 years that I took it for. I do feel at some point I'd like to stop. I worry about who I am without it, which, you know, it scares me. I don't know, especially with children, how I'll be. So, you know, maybe one day. Anyway, I go out for walks just to get out of the house. My wife buys me a really crap pair of binoculars, more on that later. And I'm sort of like, oh yeah, trying to look at a bird. I can't really see them because they're not very good binoculars. But I realised that being outside and looking at stuff, not just birds, but just general colourful things, is really good. And I started taking the antidepressants, which have lifted my mood up, and I'm starting to feel really good. Yeah, not great, but better. Not recovered, because that's never going to happen. Okay, it's always going to be an ongoing thing. But one thing happened, and if Jim's speakers work, then, sorry Jim, then this will work, okay? So this is Felmingham, near North Walsham. I'm out for a walk with my wife. She's got no interest in looking at wild stuff, and I'm constantly stopping and like, oh, look at that hair, and she's like, just keep walking. So she's very not interested in what's around her. She's very focused on doing the walk. And then suddenly, two buzzards start doing what I now know is their display flight over this tree line. And so one's going up. Oh, I can do this here because of where the screen is. One drops down, and the other one does it. And it's really graceful and it's really beautiful. And I think partly because I'm a bit high from taking my antidepressants and feeling really good about being outside, I'm like, oh, these birds are lush. And I think I tried to capture it in bird therapy. There's something really kind of majestic and free about birds of prey. And just watching them, you get really sucked into how they move and how they fly. And on that day, I was like, birds are lush. They're really, really cool. And I want to get more interested in them. And it kind of starts the interest. That's the spark of interest in birds. But it's not the only spark. And one of the things I realised that day is that when I grew up, my granddad told me a lot about birds and showed me a lot of birds. I knew what the buzzards were because he told me when I was growing up, and it had stayed in my head. And obviously I'd then gone on a life tangent, and nature and outdoors and birds, not something that I'm interested in. But I steer kind of back into who I was. And a really significant part of making wholesale lifestyle changes, especially when you choose to not drink or take drugs anymore, when your entire social group is built around socialising with those kind of people, is that you end up with no friends. And again, I'll touch on that later, but just hold that thought. So my life has been really chaotic and hedonistic and has now become really closed in this tiny little bubble. And everything has to kind of reframe itself and recompute. It's really difficult to navigate. But birds initially make me feel really good. There's my granddad. And I'll talk about him now for a minute. Granddad's awesome. I lived with Granddad for a bit when I was a child, when we ran away from Dad. And he sort of became a pseudo-father figure to me. Granddad loves nature, but he's really quiet, so he doesn't like force it on you. And that's an approach I take with my daughter, actually. You know, she can come and look at what I'm looking at, and I'll show her something, but I don't force her to be interested in it. I like it, you know, it's got to be organic. I like it to happen naturally. That's what Grandad did with me. And there are significant birds that Grandad showed me. The Great Crested Grebe being one of them. We used to go out on his friend's little boat on the Salthouse Broad. And you know, I'm not like saying, oh, woe is me, but I grew up with just my mother, so we didn't really have a lot of money, so I didn't get to go like on holiday like other children. So going out on a boat on the Norfolk Broads is like a mega treat to me when I'm a child. And Grandad showing me stuff like this just enhances that experience. But then as an adult going back, and walking around, I don't know, like Whitlingham with my wife when I'm starting to take an interest in wildlife, and I'm like, Great Crystal Greaves. We looked at them when I was a kid, and it all starts to reconnect in my brain, okay? So then I start going out on my own with my crap pair of binoculars, and I wrote about something that happened at Cly. Where's the laser thing? There you go. In Cly. So I go and sit in a hide, and I'm trying to look at... I still don't actually know what the bird was to this day. I think I claimed it was something in the book, but I'm not actually entirely sure that that's what it was, because, it didn't work out. But anyway, these guys said... I said to these two guys, this relatively sort of older men, who I would say looked like bird watchers without sort of getting into a stereotypes debate, okay? I said, could you just help me identify that bird? So Big Collins, bird guide in the Cly hide. And I'm like, I just want to look it up in here. And one of the guys goes, well, if you've got yourself a decent pair of bins. And I was like, whoa, okay, thanks. I'll go and work harder so I can buy a better pair of bins. So anyway, it wasn't a great experience, and I'm trying to like find my feet and learn about birds, and really he needed to like not give me a hug like Grandad, but he needed to embrace it and be like, yeah, come on, let's have a look. Like I feel everyone should be, and I'll talk about that in a bit. Now I go to some other places, somewhere that Jim and I have been a few times, Cantley Beet Factory. I go to a Grandad, we walk round. Grandad's got bird feeders in his garden, so then I put bird feeders up in the garden where I'm living with my wife in Ratkeith, a little song thrush on there. I think it's two actually, or possibly a robin. More birds are coming to the garden, and I'm taking an interest in the garden birds as well, because I realise that I don't just have to go out to engage with the birds as well. I can be at home, and that's really good. Then I go to Buckingham, again another place I've been with Jim a fair bit, with Grandad, and we're kind of at the point now where I'm starting to think, hey, this is cool. I'm going out on my own, and I'm going out with my Grandad, but I kind of need some friends, and really some my own age, if possible. Doesn't quite work out like that quickly. My hand is forced anyway because Grandad has a stroke, and through his recovery he realises he can't walk as far. It's the nature of these things. So Grandad can't really come out with me as much anymore. He can go somewhere if we can drive there, park and walk, but he can't like go walking, which is a real shame. So I do what every young person who wants to gain more friends does, and go on social media. And again, more on that in a bit. That's where I sort of come across people like Jim, who are posting in Bird Forum it was called. It used to be a really active platform for people to talk about bird watching. I don't think anyone posts. Yeah, I think it exists, but I don't think anyone posts on it anymore. Yeah, so social media may well just disappear. But anyway, I'll go on, and I find there are actually a few other people who birdwatch who are my age, and I tentatively start trying to make friends with them. But the other thing I do is join a local bird group. Can I slag off another wildlife group here, or is that not acceptable? Is that all right? Yeah, it'll make you feel good, so I'll do it. Right. I'm just gonna walk over this side now. So I'll go to Norwich RSPB group. Okay. Oh, I hear a few laughs. Yeah, so you might have been there. Sorry if you're the treasurer or anything. So I go there. It's a bit musty, not because of the people, just where it is. It's a bit old school. It's got this structure that kind of reminds me of, I don't know, just something old, archaic. It's just not what I wanted. But I go, and then something happens. I talk to the guy who leads the trips, the walks, and I say, oh yeah, I'm really up for socialising with some people, because I haven't got any friends. I didn't actually say that, but so I need to socialise with people, really get out a bit. Can I come on some of the walks? And he goes, well, you can if you want, but it's only me that goes. And I look at him and think, no, I don't. I just, I think about it and I'm like, okay, maybe this isn't what I'm looking for. And then I joined the Wenston Valley Birdwatching Society, because I live in Helston at the time with my wife's parents, because the only way you can get on the property ladder now is to live with your wife's parents or husbands or partners. Yeah, and so we're living with them. I joined the Wenston Valley Birdwatching Society. I go there. They're all still much older than me. There are a few people who are still older than me, but are closer to my age. And it's not about their age anyway. It's about how they make me feel when I walk in. I walk in and they're all like, "Way!" Okay, that's an exaggeration. but they're all like, welcoming, hello, hi. And I go in and they start talking to me and it's lovely. And I'll end up going on a few of the things. There's a photo actually coming up in a bit of a thing I did with them, a walk I did at High Ash Farm. But the point being that they accommodated me. And at this point, I've started writing. Here's an insight into the mind of somebody with obsessive compulsive disorder. If you have got a diagnosis of OCD, don't try and write a book. It will consume you. It's very structured writing process is all I'm going to say. I started writing anyway. I had this blog, Bergh Therapy. I know Jim used to read it, and a few other people. Well, quite a few people read it and engaged with it, and it was good. And I set up like a Twitter account and stuff, which obviously Jim has just told us is going down the pan. So, but anyway, social media was good. Connected me with other bird watchers. Made me realise that other people were interested in bird watching as a way of feeling well, and that's kind of where bird therapy comes into play. Like the whole thing. Basically, I just wanted a cool name for the blog. And I was like, bird watching is my therapy. I'll be clear again, it's not my only therapy. I've had extensive talking therapy. I take medication. I've had to then go back and have more talking therapy later on. I've had cognitive behavioural therapy, loads of stuff. It all comes together. And as I'll touch upon later, it's not just about birds anymore, it's just about being outside, which I think is just as important. But anyway, I started writing, people became interested in it. Something happened, which I'll talk about later, that made the book happen, which was really cool. But what I want to go through now is it's all well and good me standing here and saying birdwatching made me feel really good and connecting with nature made me feel really good, but there is actually a growing body of science that backs this up. Now, rather than essentially bore you with loads of research that other people have done, I'll mix it up with mine as well. So, have you heard of the 5 ways to wellbeing? Yeah? This is the framework that bird therapy was written around. It was essentially 5 blogs that then became 5 chapters of the book. I genuinely and firmly believe in this model. There are 5 things you can bring into your life to improve your well-being. So we have to connect, which has multiple meanings, and we'll look at that in a minute. To take notice, to keep learning or to learn, to be active, and to give. And I challenge anyone, as I do whenever I do a talk, to not just on kind of first thought, have a minute if you want, see how that already kind of overlays with bird watching and connecting with nature. So much, in fact, that we may as well call them the 5 ways to well-birding. See what I did there? Yeah. That's a really bad animation transition there, but, So number 1, take notice. Do you recognise the bird? It's a dunnock. I risk really going on about dunnocks because I really, really like them. So I won't go on too much. But let's just do a show of hands. Who else loves a dunnock? Yes, Jim. You do love a dunnock. Okay, dunnocks, they're lush. Why are they lush? Let's talk about it. Okay? Point here being that you only know a dunnock is lush because you took notice of the dunnock. Right? Hear me out. Oh no. This is a new talk. I've got a new slide. Can I come back to that and just talk about the dunnock and then go back to that, yeah? Right, cool, you didn't read it. Awesome. Terrible picture. Like I said, I didn't have a very good pair of binoculars. The picture's taken through the binoculars. Forgive me. So I'm doing the RSPB Garden Birdwatch. Excellent way of connecting with nature, especially if you've got children. You really, really should do it. And I swear by that, and I wrote about it in Bird Therapy. This dunnock is sitting in front of me while I'm doing a big garden birdwatch, and I'm not paying him any attention, and he's getting a bit cocky. He's like, are you going to look? You can see, look at him. He's like, are you going to actually look at me? And I'm sort of sitting there looking at the feeders thinking, I'm going to get a goldfinch soon. Come on, I just want a goldfinch. It's a suburban garden in Helston, yeah. We once had a grey wagtail on the pond. How cool is that? Not on Garden Birdwatch Day, obviously. So Dunnock's sitting there. He's saying, look at me, and I'm not going to go as far as saying I want to shoo him away, but he was irritating me a bit. And then I stopped and looked, and I took notice of the Dunnock. And I was like, oh man, you're really pretty. I'd never noticed this kind of smoky, blue-grey, hue on their chest, and the infinite shades of brown. Try writing a description of a dunnock, yeah? It's tough. You basically have to refer to lots of different types of wood to get the effect of the back. But they're gorgeous birds. And as you progress into nature, watching and engaging, you get better camera. So there's a better picture of a dunnock that I took, yeah? That really does show how beautiful they are, though. And because I stopped in my little deck chair, I think it was a deck chair, watching the bird feeders, but stopped and looked at the dunnock instead, I realised how awesome they actually are, and I took in the intricacies of its feathers and its plumage, and was like, yeah, you are awesome birds. So I've got a real soft spot for them. Talking about social media, I've created the hashtag Team Dunnock, which became very popular for a very short length of time. Did a run of t-shirts for charity, raised 700 quid for Young Minds, mental health charity. Awesome. And all of this kind of harks back to the concept of mindfulness. That's where the slide should have been. I don't know if you've ever heard of mindfulness. It's kind of faddy and popular now, but I'm not going to say it works, but funny story / disclaimer. After my last mindfulness session provided by the NHS, I was so relaxed, I writ off a car driving back from the session. So it really does chill you out, yeah? Mindfulness is the energy of being aware and awake to the present moment. It is the continuous practice of touching life deeply in every moment of daily life. To be mindful is to be truly alive, present, and at one with those around you and with what you're doing. It's a bit gumpy, okay, the description, but basically what it's saying is embrace the present moment. When you're outside with any form of wildlife, and especially birds, there's so much going on from a multi-sensory perspective that it's impossible not to immerse yourself in the world of birds and nature. Nature is mindfulness. Mindfulness is nature. I was going to say his name, but I always struggle, so it's Thich Nhat Hanh. Died this year in January. He was the guy that created mindfulness. It's closely linked to kind of Tibetan Buddhist practices. But yeah, I really believe in it actually after going away and doing a course. Really tough to practice. Sometimes just sitting down on a bench in the middle of a reserve. You mentioned Dukin's Marsh. I think you took me there once and we looked at some like willow emerald damselflies with James Emerson. Is that one? Yeah, so I remember going there. Somewhere like that would be a lush place to just sit and like actually soak it in and take it in. Okay, past Dunnocks. Oh, forgot I embedded that. Oh, let's just listen to that again. Yeah. So they're also really pretty and have a lovely song. It's this whole multi-sensory thing. A lot of the time, and it really annoys me actually, we say bird watching, or even worse, birding. But we say bird watching, yeah? I don't think you ever truly just watch a bird, because when you are out, even at like quite a busy reserve, you're still using other senses, yeah? So we listen to birds, we listen to bird song. We often locate scarcer species by knowing their calls. I don't know, yellow-browed warbler in titflock, for example. We don't really use our sense of smell, but natural places do provide different aromas. I use a heath covered in gorse, for example. That wonderful smell of coconut. Oh, Malibu. That's not good for a recovering alcoholic, is it? But I do love heaths for that multi-sensory experience, okay? We don't generally stop and eat things while we're out bird watching, unless we've got a packed lunch or there's a fantastic cake shop at the reserve. So as a rule, I think you see what I'm getting at. We tend to use more than one sense when we're engaging with nature. Key point, there's your heath and your wonderful aroma of coconut gorse. I love heaths, I spent a lot of time on them. Became part of my local patch, which I'll talk about in a bit, and how important I think dedicating yourself to a single space can be for your well-being, especially if you're trying to improve it. But I'm not going to stand here and say you shouldn't engage with birds and nature in the way that you want to, because we're all individuals and we all like different things. Yeah. So if you want to go and twitch on the other side of the country, that's fine. You just won't find me doing it. So here's one that I said about science and avoiding it, but I will just mention WWT, Wildfowl and Wetland Trust, are doing an amazing project at the minute called the Blue Prescribing Project. And I'm sure you've heard of social prescribing with nature. And if you haven't, it's basically the concept of, and I'm quite opinionated about this, so I won't go into it too much, but it's, we will prescribe you with a dose of nature. Okay? If it's a program and structured and involves guidance to help people engage with nature, then awesome. You cannot literally just prescribe somebody nature. We are nature. Okay. However, the Blue Prescribing Project is brilliant, and Wildfowl and Wetland Trust are working with loads of other charities and mental health charities, and they're putting together this program, which they are piloting at the minute, where they dedicate taking people out to wetlands for wellbeing benefit. And it seems to be working, and it's a longitudinal study, so it'll go on for a while, and then there'll be results published from it. I think it'll be genuinely interesting. I touched upon some research by a guy called Jules Pretty in bird therapy, which sort of semi-proved that being around water was good for your health. Who's an active bird watcher here, or has been, or was recently, or enjoys connecting with just nature in general? Does almost everywhere you go to do it have water? Most of it, yeah? It's just an interesting correlation that I find. We do tend to gravitate towards places with water because it brings a wider array of species. And let's face it, ducks are pretty cool, yeah? So are waders. We all love to see a wading bird, okay? You're not going to see them unless you go somewhere a bit wet. And yeah, water is good for you, and being around it is great. So I wanted to just touch upon that because I think it's important. Let's do the next one. To connect. By the way, illustrations in bird therapy were done by a lady called Jo Brown. She's phenomenal. She wrote a book called Secrets of a Devon Wood, which is her nature diary. It's utterly stunning. I should have bought it actually because I've got a copy. She illustrated bird therapy, and I'll tell you what, right? I asked her for specific pictures, and she nailed each one first time. So when she sent them to me, this is what she sent to me. And I was like, yeah, got it. That's exactly what I wanted. Bitten in flight. Hilarious story about my wife. Strumpshire fen. I feel really bad for my wife when I do a talk because I make her sound really bad. She is wonderful, okay? Let me just be really clear about that. Just in case you do ever meet her, Jim. Right. So we're in Strumpshire fen, Towerhide, the tall one, yeah? Standing there, I'm sort of hopeful I might see my first ever bittern. Suddenly out of nowhere, bittern erupts from reed bed and starts flying. I go a bit, I said about manic hands earlier, yeah, I'm like, whoa, bittern! Get some other people that are in there to look, they're all really excited, the cameras start going, my wife is looking in the complete opposite direction, going, that duck is really pretty. Admittedly, it was a potchard, yeah, so they are pretty. Bittern, first ever one. Thankfully, we've been to like Minsmere, she's seen them since, so yeah, all good. But yeah, that was really funny at the time. And I wrote about that in bird therapy as well. But it's this whole connecting with a bird. It's used, isn't it, in birding terms, to connect with a species. And it's our target species, and we're going to connect with it. But connection is more than that. Jim, I couldn't find a photo of you.
Yeah, good job.
Sorry. You might even know some of these people on here. This is from Wensum Valley Birdwatching Society, down the bottom, went on a walk with them. I took the photo, I'm not in it, I would have reduced the average age by quite a bit. And then these are some people that I met through birdwatching. Unfortunately, because I'm quite outspoken, I got kicked out of his WhatsApp group, so I don't talk to him anymore. But all the others I still speak to, and Sasha's become a very good friend of mine, so has Mike. Yeah, we just found a fire crest at my old patch, Corston Heath. I was very pleased with that. We'd gone to see, there was a large number of ring ouzels there a couple of years ago, actually the year before the pandemic. And then there's fire crest as well, which is really good. This one here, we've gone to see some hawfinches at Ringland Common. Do you know Stuart Betts? Any of you? Yeah, he's a top bloke as well. So there you have it, connecting with people, made a few friends because of nature. And I didn't really have any because of the lifestyle changes that I made. And that includes like people that I've been friends with since school, who I then no longer spoke to because all they wanted to do was go and get wrecked, and I didn't. So really tough, actually, to change life like that. So yeah, meeting people was really helpful because we are social people by our very nature. So connecting with people is a really important part of of my recovery and the concept of connection. So it's connecting with a local patch, which I said I'd speak about. Started at Haveringland Hall, private site, which has this wonderful lake. Saw in the kind of 3 years that I patched there, 119 species of bird, I think. Might have been just over 120, including smew on the lake, yellow-browed warbler in the trees just here, actually. What else? Firecrests there a couple of times. Loads of good stuff. Anyway, ring-ouzel, gargany, all around that lake. And you've got Corston Heath, and these are quite close to each other, so I could go, where's the old laser? I could go here and then I could go there. So I'd go there first, do a little lake walk, and then go and experience a completely different habitat. You've got breeding nightjars, breeding woodlarks. Do you hear about that geezer that was nicking all the eggs from the Wenston Valley sites? Busted him. Yeah? Yeah? So for years he hoodwinked me, and I thought he was a birder. And then one day he turns around to me and he goes, do you want to come and have a look at some buzzards' nests I've found? And I was like, you're always bloody going on about nests. Like, I'm not going to come and look at birds who are nesting. I'm going to leave them alone. All right, he goes. And I start thinking, you're a bit dodgy, huh? And then I remember bumping into him months later, and he let slip that he'd been to prison before, wrongly, he says, for having his late father's egg collection. Now, actually, that's not uncommon. Okay, it's not uncommon for people to inherit things like that. So I, again, took it with a pinch of salt. But then I went home and I was like, hang on a minute. Then I started keeping an eye on him a bit more, notified a few other people about him. Then we found out that he was taking nightjar eggs. He was caught at the time that he was put in prison on his hands and knees, blowing nightjar egg. BD, he went to prison. He had his driving licence taken away as well, because that's how he got to Corston. Single-handedly decimated the nightjar population of Alderford Common. They no longer breed there. We believe he probably decimated the nightingale. The nightingale population of Ringland Common as well, which some people may or may not know were there. Well, he killed them all anyway. Probably got rid of turtle doves at Alderford for a few years, but they've come back in force now, right? So that's really good. But yeah, arsehole, basically. We busted him. Really proud of that. Anyway, that's a proper tangent. I wouldn't normally speak about that, but I was emoted by the picture and wanted to talk about it. Then Steve, someone that I knew, was ill and was away for a year, and he left Spa and Pools unwatched. And I was like, oh yeah, Spa and Pools, I bet I'll find something good there. Never did. But beautiful place all the same. Did see lots of nice birds there, but never quite lived up to the expectations. However, as Jim will remember, appended to Sparham was Ling Easter Pits, where I found Norfolk's largest ever emergence of clouded yellow butterflies, which Jim came and saw. The landowner was adamant that it didn't go public, which is fine. It's because he was in the process of putting the land on the market, and he didn't want any ecological assessments. I was really torn. I kind of wanted it protected by butterfly conservation. I was allowed to notify butterfly conservation, but it wasn't allowed to go any further than that. When you came at the start, it was about 30, wasn't there? Including a Helise-type female, which is like a silvery yellow version of a clouded yellow. Stunning. It was amazing, wasn't it? And I only knew what they were because I'd just been to Madeira, and then I come back and I stood there and I was like, am I tripping? Is that a clouded yellow? And then I was like, yeah, it is. And there's another one. And then I followed them about a bit and found there were loads. So that was really cool. And then basically when I became a father, I realised that you don't really get to go out anymore. So I started just walking around where I live, which is Reetham. As I was talking to Andy about, just before I came to speak to you, do not underestimate your local area. And if you put the effort in to even an inland patch that Reetham is, okay, you never know what you might find. All right, the smew was in Haveringland, I'll let that go. And the Dartford warbler was on Corston. Yeah, so was the windchat, actually. So this isn't fair to Reetham, but there's a pièce de résistance coming on the next slide. That's my garden, the black red start. This year, on the day that my daughter was born, my new daughter, because I've got two, in April, a black redstart appeared in my garden again for the second time. It was incredible. Utterly blew my mind. That's Dartford warbler, which was at Corston. That's the firecrest that Mike found. It's Winchat inland, all inland, yeah. And then this year, April, the week before my daughter was born, so the week before the black redstart, my wife was getting really annoyed with me because I was more anxious than she was. She was the one that was about to give birth, for God's sake, and I'm the one freaking out. Pathetic. Anyway, she says, you need to get out of the house, you're doing my head in. I said, all right, yeah, I'll go for a walk. I walked over to Reetham Cemetery and boom, there was a male pied flycatcher just chilling in the cemetery. The cemetery in Reetham, a male pied flycatcher in breeding plumage. Wow, that's mind-blowingly cool. Made the mistake of telling some people, and then throughout the course of the day, Reetham Cemetery was descended on by local bird watchers who wanted to add pied flycatcher to their list. Some of them were so inept, they turned up without binoculars. What? Had the cameras, but they didn't have their binoculars. And one lady was like, oh, I'm such a sucker, aren't I? And I was like, oh, yeah, I'll help you find it. And I ended up walking round the cemetery and finding it, because I was lucky, it's nearly opposite my house. I was able to walk home, have a drink, go back and see who else has come to have a look at my bird that I found. You know, I know it's not like a rare bird or anything, but in the terms of local finds, the pied flycatcher is pretty banging, so I was really chuffed with that. But the point being that never underestimate what passes through your local area, okay? Really passionate about that. I think dedicating yourself to a place enables you to discover more about yourself, because you spend so much time hyper-focused on little details, that you kind of lose the thought processes of anything that you're worrying about. This is what I find anyway. And then, like I said, it enables you to just kind of reconnect with yourself. It's that whole mindfulness thing again. Oh, this would have been a good time to drop the mindfulness slide back in, wouldn't it? And here's mindfulness. I'm not going to flick it back. I don't know why I put this in. I just quite like the photo. So I do know why I put this in, actually. It's the message on the back of the T-shirt. Okay, rewild your soul. This is kind of an embodiment, I guess, of how I feel about being outside and connecting with nature. This is Booton Common. Never found anything exciting there. Or silver wash fritillary butterfly ones. That was quite exciting for a local record. But what I'll revisit it one more time, is I've been able to reconnect with who I am. I told you about when I was with Grandad and when I was a child, and I was more interested in these kind of things, and then suppressing it by trying to be something that I wasn't, and then actually being able to accept that I'm just a massive geek, really, and I love wild stuff and being outside and doing that kind of thing, and I just needed to rewild my soul. Just in case you want to buy these, they're not mine, but there's a guy called Last Wolf Clothing. You'd like it, Jim. He sells the T-shirt. I've wanted him to do one with a front print, but he won't. Anyway, rewild your soul. Strong message. Give something back. Who feels like they give something back to birds or bird watching? You should all put your hands up, because all of you feed your garden birds, yeah? Yeah, you all feed your garden birds, you must do. If you don't, then fair enough. But yeah, feeding your garden birds, massive way of giving something back. And then you can take part in citizen science, that's what we call it. Big Garden Bird Watch, best way to connect with citizen science. WEBS, no, Jim, what does it stand for? Anyone know? WEBS is the Wetland Bird Survey, okay? If you have a local patch that's got a lake on it and it has loads of ducks on it, you could sign up for the Wetland Bird Survey. Did you do it for Surlingham for a while? Yeah, I did it for Haveringland as well. 92 gadwall once. 130 moorhen once. But I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't have been doing that deliberately. Yeah, 130 moorhen, can you imagine that? That's a lot of moorhen. Yeah, so good way of, again, giving something back. You're giving data back to the BTO, the British Trust for Ornithology, who run the Wetland Bird Survey and the Breeding Bird Survey as well. They then collect that data and they're able to provide us with annual reports and then like decade reports of declines, etc. A bit like what you get from the RSPB State of Nature, I think it's called, that they do relatively often with our wonderful subscription fees. Oh, that was a bit scathing, wasn't it? Yeah, giving something back. really good way. Feeding the garden birds is banging. That's an example of what you have to do, though, when you do a wetland bird survey. You've got to really be dedicated to want to count that many gadwall and that many coot and shoveler and tufties. Have any of you ever seen the video that I did with Chris Packham on Winter Watch? No? So I was on Winter Watch. He came to Haveringland, actually. I'll tell you something. He's a very interesting man in many ways. Very interesting. And he comes down and we go out and we spend some time together and we talk about suicide on Winter Watch. It's very powerful. Video's kicking about on YouTube if you ever want to watch it. And he absolutely mocks me for enjoying counting ducks. Yeah. And bigging up gadwall. But the gadwall is the dunnock of the bird world, okay? They are, I don't know if there's a pretty one, but they are stunning up close. He's all right. You can just see this sort of diamante frosting on the front, on the grey. They're really, really beautiful ducks. But anyway, it's straight in as well on the video. He's like, "Wah, I've never heard anyone extolling the virtues of gadwall," he goes. Luckily, I didn't say what I was thinking. I just said I love gadwall. But yeah, so that's what you're faced with. So you've got to be really into it. And then feeding your garden birds. I'm so lucky that 4 different species of birds nest in my roof or garden. And this is suburban reefing, as I said. We have starlings and house sparrows in the back. Live in like a 1970s house, and we've not blocked anything up, so it's quite open for birds. Yes, we've got starlings and sparrows in the back roof. A blackbird that nests in a small, very small little bush in the garden every year. And swifts, which nest in the front of the house. Above, well, 1 year 2 nests, but most years it's just 1. Very lucky. And then you get these wonderful sights, don't you, when you feed the birds and they all line up and the parents come to feed them. It's amazing to think that that's going to turn into one of the most beautiful birds out there. Have you ever seen a starling in the hand or up close? Unreal. It looks like an oil slick in the light. So beautiful, the iridescence. There is one of the new... I'll make that 5. 5 species, because these bad boys came last year. I bought a camera that you put in to the nest box and broke it when I tried to install it. So I never got to see what they were up to, but they did fledge, and there's one of the young. I was really chuffed with that. So yeah, 5 species in a tiny little garden. It's amazing what you can do by knocking a nest box up and not blocking up the holes in your roof, like all my neighbours seem to do. So never underestimate how you can give something back to birds by just letting your trees grow a bit wild and not blocking up holes in your roof. Okay. Oh, hold on. The best way to give something back is to not force people to be interested in what you're interested in, but if someone shows an interest, don't shy away. Too many times have I stood in a bird hive and a child has run in and lots of people have gone when instead they could go, okay, some people aren't comfortable like talking to children, and I guess I'm a teacher, so I want to do that. It's part of my kind of natural instinct. But if you show, they're often with their parents, if you say, come have a look, is it all right? I'll say to the dad, for example, he can look through this if he wants. The boy will come over, he'll have a look, he'll go, oh my God, what's that? He'll be pointing it at the floor. But, you know, a heron, a grey heron, he's not going to see that. And I'll tell you about this story, right? I used to work with children who'd been kicked out of school. I worked with this boy called Connor. And Connor grew up in Lakenham, if you know Norwich well. It is on the deprivation index, one of the poorest areas of Norwich, along with Larkman and some others. Connor doesn't do a lot apart from play computer games at home. Connor's got some behavioural problems, got ADHD as well, attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder. Connor gets quite angry. One day Connor's smashing up our office, and I say to Connor, you're getting in my car, and we're going to go for a drive, and I'm going to take you somewhere for a walk, and you're going to calm down, because you can't calm down here. So that's what we're going to do. Take him in the car. Where are we going to go? Take him to Whitlingham. Okay? We'll drive into the car park. And he's, I'm not fucking going for a walk, he's going. And I'm like, look, we'll just go for a walk, and I'll show you what I do when I'm stressed, and I'm not telling you that you should be interested in doing this, but hear me out. comes out and he's wearing a new pair of Nike trainers and he's, oh, I don't want to stand in the mud, and he's all, and I'm like, dude, just chill, oh, it's fine. Get to the little lake at Whitlingham, if you know it. There's some duck. What do I do when there's duck? I count them. And Connor's like, well, let me have a go then. So I give him my binoculars, and I've got the scope. And he's like, yeah, oh, no, I see why it chills you out. I'm like, right. You understand that it doesn't have to be something that you look at as a negative experience or a geeky thing or a weird thing. It's okay, I'm just doing it because it chills me out. He's like, yeah, I get it. And then bang, you can hear it coming, kingfisher. And I'm like, Connor, it's a kingfisher, right? We're going to find it. Get the scope on it. Right, look, now, follow it. Got it? Yeah, got it. Connor's like, oh my God. He can't believe, in fact, I don't think he said that, I think he swore, but he can't believe that such a beautiful bird lives in this country. Okay, he cannot believe it. And I show him kingfishers in a book at a later date, and he thinks they're stunning anyway. Fast forward 5 or 6 years, I bump into Connor. He's referred to a college provision that I'm working at the time. He comes up to me, he's hench, big boy. Right, sir? Yeah, Connor, I'm alright. How are you? What are you doing with yourself? You've obviously come here because you want to learn a trade, because it was a place where you learnt a trade. Yeah, carpentry, innit? Cool, what are you up to? What do you do out of school now? Just still playing whatever, I can't, Fortnite, the game or whatever it is. No, guess what I'm into? And I'm like, birdwatching. Fishing. But there are connotations, aren't there? Yeah? So he's outside, he's engaging with nature. Simplicity kingfishers, isn't it? And I know what they are because you showed me. Yes, Connor, absolutely. This is a boy from a really deprived area. He's not going to see a kingfisher apart from the experience that I provided him with. My point being that you can give something back to people in many ways. I'm telling my 4-month-old daughter how awesome coots are, and she's probably drooling down my chest. But it's lovely. So giving something back in that way. I think there's one more because I'm really conscious of the time, Andy, as well. Be active. I'll rattle through this. We all know that being active is good for our health. It's logic. Anyone know what that is? Whoa! That was quick. I normally go, is it Foxley? So, thank you. Yeah, Foxley Wood. You have to walk for really, really far to go and see cool stuff. You can go see Purple Emperors there now, which are awesome, if you like staring at the tops of trees. Anyone know what that is? Oh! Yep. Winterton Dunes. North Dunes? Yeah. The ones with the totem pole? Yeah, it's that one. There's a trend, isn't there? Oh, you got to walk really far. Blakeney Point, yeah. Oh, where's that? We all know where that is. Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. Holcombe. Yeah, Holcombe Bay Beach. Oh, no one's going to get this. It's a challenge.
Is it where the stone curly is on? I can't think what that is called.
Is it not Westleton? Weeting. Yeah, no, it's not Weeting. That's the sea. There's your clue. Oh, again, we're on the right coast line. Oh, keep going. Yeah, it's Trimmingham. You just know the only places I ever go.
I don't go there, you meant.
Yeah. Found a Palliser's warbler in the trees there a few years ago. Found my first Palliser's warbler with this man. Yeah, written about in bird therapy, big moment. Never found anything rarer than that, but Palliser's warblers are lush. Yeah, Trimmingham, but again, I had to walk really far to find anything here. That's not dust, by the way. I think that's a flock of linnets. I can take a photo sometimes. So yeah, being active, you've got to be out and doing stuff, but it's not just about being physically active. Having a hobby that promotes the development of knowledge and skills is proven to slow down the rate of hippocampal atrophy associated with Alzheimer's disease. So there are great benefits to taking an interest in any hobby. Obviously a hobby that then has proven well-being benefits, i.e. birdwatching, is ticking multiple boxes. So it's just something worth bearing in mind. The other thing as well about being active is, anyone love a bloody scope around? They weigh loads. I don't take mine out anymore because some are back in, not because of the scope, but carrying children as well. But yeah, we tend to take a lot of food out as well, us hardcore birders with our bags of sandwiches and cakes, and fruit, healthy eating too. So yeah, I'll rattle through this one as well. Oh, Jim, as a teacher, learning. Anyone know all the races of yellow wagtails? I was hoping someone would say yes. Someone did once say yes, and then I really wanted to quiz them, but it was such a crap photo, I couldn't read the names. Again, my point being that there's so much to learn about bears, isn't there? These are great books by the late Martin Garner. The challenge series, they're great. They just look at birds that kind of look similar, and actually they're all slightly different. You've got to be really into it if you're up for finding out about that kind of stuff. But I will say that the Martin Garner challenge series helped me to identify an eastern lesser whitethroat at Haysborough from that picture. That is a crap picture, okay? Still could work out what it was, yeah, rusty flanks. It's all about rusty flanks, yeah, and wing patches. But the Martin Garner book had helped me to know that there were subtle differences in lesser whitethroats and get my name in the Norfolk Bird Report as a finder of a rare bird. But yeah, so you start to learn about these nuances. Because you take notice, because you've connected with the place, it all starts to interlink now. Butterflies, there they are, Jim, just for you. Helise type female, stunning, absolutely stunning. I think Helise means moon in another language, Latin or Greek. Probably doesn't, and someone will correct me. Sun, there you go. As bright as that doesn't make any sense then, does it? But yeah. Silver-studded blue butterflies, top left. If you've not seen them, get yourself over to Buxton Heath. Covered in them in kind of June, best time to go. Butterflies are lush, and I never really got into butterflies until I'd cemented my bird knowledge and then realised that there was other stuff flying around when I was outside. And I was like, oh yeah, butterflies. And then it happened. I've been talking to Andy about it. And Jim, is that the rain? Wow. And Jim was part of the reason as well that I got into the dreaded moths, right? The dreaded moths, okay? Moths are a fantastic way to engage with nature at home, especially when you've had children. It's like a box of treasures that you open up in the morning that your child also tends to want to have a look at as well, and then run away because moths are weird. This is a bit better now. That is a moth. It's a moth. Lunar hornet, yeah. Lunar hornet clearing, actually, yeah, thank you, Jim. Yeah, they're really cool. Slightly conflicted opinions on them because you can only attract them by using pheromone lures. I don't really think it's humane. So if I'm doing it once and then the lure goes away. That's just my personal preference because you're interrupting with life cycles, potentially breeding cycles. This is Palpita vitrialis, glass wing, I think. My Latin or whatever expert over here could correct me. I think it does mean glass wing. That's a migrant. Moths migrate from like Africa and Central Europe and end up over here. Anyone know what this bad boy is in the bottom left? Oh, there you go. So Clifton nonpareil, the blue underwing, okay? Get red underwings. They're weird, like crimson underwings and stuff. Clifton nonpareil's a banging moth, yeah? Last year, get quite a few records, and I was telling Andy, I went outside, looked at the wall above the moth trap, and I see this underwing about 10 foot up on the side of the house. So I did what every hardcore nature enthusiast does, and I got my daughter's rock pooling net out of the garage, climbed up on a chair, and managed to hook down the Clifton without hurting it, and popped it into a Chinese container. That's a Chinese rice container it's sitting in. It's huge. Quality moth. You ever had one at home? Those that moth trap? There's unprecedented influx of them last year. Can't get away from them. Crowning moment. Cydia milleniana, the Breckland piercer. The second ever record for England in my back garden. So rare, in fact, that all the scoffy moth WhatsApp group people refused to accept it was one when I first posted a photo of it. They soon came and collected it from mine in a cool box so they could all tick it onto their list, didn't they? Weirdos. Cydia milleniana, Breckland piercer, beautiful. I can't claim any credit for the photo. I can't take a photo of a moth that's that good. Mike McCarthy, a friend of mine, took a picture. Oblique carpet shouldn't have even been in my garden. You've heard of oblique stripes, those that moth trap. Brecon speciality. Oblique carpet comes from over East Norfolk, kind of like Horsey way, turned up in Reetham. Yeah, it doesn't really look like a moth, does it? It looks like a bit of manky brown paper. But yeah, again, I did a charity thing, T-shirts, Team Moth. Almost wore it tonight, but it's bright pink. It makes me look a bit stupid, so I didn't wear it. Yeah, Team Moth, really popular. Like doing stuff like that, and I've lost the clicker. Ah, here it is. I should probably talk about the book really now for a couple of minutes. I don't actually like bird therapy. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Holding it upside down. For loads of reasons. Oh no! Let me just ask you this question. What motivates you to connect with nature? You're a wildlife group. It's partly rhetoric, or it's open for anyone that actually is willing to share. I literally hate people, so that is really big thumbs up from me. Anyone else? Oh, that's really cool. That's like layers of connection as well. I like that. Jim, putting you on the spot. What motivates you to connect with nature? Change, yeah. Seasons really, I mean, I could go on for hours, and I've already gone on for longer than I said I would, and I find it really difficult to cut my talk down. But the seasons are a really important way of grounding yourself as the seasons change. And do you know what? Climate change has really buggered this up. I've been really reliant in the sort of 7 years I've been really interested in nature on those changes actually happening and giving me that consistency and grounding to know that that's coming and that season's going to change and the wildlife will change, and I can go with it and follow it. But birds are getting later and later. Species are moving around that shouldn't be around. It's not good. And it's worrying, actually. And I'm not going to preach to you about the things we can do to reduce our carbon footprint. We all know what we can do if we choose to. But just remember that if nature itself motivates you to connect with it, then we do need to protect it. And that's all I'll say about that side of things. Some people, it's a list, isn't it? It's seeing as many species as they can, because that's innately part of human nature. Simon Baron-Cohen, the brother of Sacha Baron-Cohen, Ali G, Borat, he's an eminent researcher of autism and psychology, and he's done a lot of research about human instinct as to why we collect things, especially men. And I'm not just saying that, it's a fact. No, it's a proven fact from Simon Baron-Cohen, some studies he's done, and it dates back to Neanderthal times when we were hunter-gatherers, and it's literally part of who we are and can't be avoided. That's his opinion anyway. However, not everyone likes the list. We all like nature for different reasons, but you're a wildlife group, and that's why you're here. That's why I'm here talking to you about it as well. So what motivates me to connect with it? It's similar to Jim. There's always something different. It's awesome. I love it, and it's really helped me with my mental health. I'll come back to the definition of mindfulness. You can read it yourself this time. You just think about that next time you're outside. Is what I'm going to say. I'm going to move on now and just rattle through some stuff about the book. No one would publish it because, as I'm well aware, it's not particularly well written. Sometimes it's not about how well a book is written, it's about what it conveys, in my opinion. Couldn't get anyone to publish it. It had like 86, I think, rejections from agents and publishers. Pretty demoralising. I did what every young person does, and I moaned about it on social media. Which actually led to somebody getting in contact with me and saying, you should try Unbound. I'll put you in contact with this editor, Simon Spanton, he might be interested. He's now actually at Elliot and Thompson, he published loads of nature stuff. So, he knows his stuff. Simon said, have a think about it, because I know you have issues with your mental health, and I wouldn't want to make your mental health worse by getting you to crowdfund to publish a book. I said, well, just draw it up, show me what it's going to look like, and then I'll see. They quoted me £12,500 to publish Bird Therapy and to raise it through their platform, and I was like, ain't going to happen. so there's no point. He told me to carry on writing and to do the crowdfund, so I did. I was writing about spring here. Good old Collinsburg guide, can't go wrong. Best bird book out there. Did the crowdfund, didn't expect much of it. It's just some examples of some really cool stuff here. Look at that. That's old Bill Bailey on the private message. Boom, boom, boom. He put £1,000 of his own money in to get it up there. And then my stepdad had been lurking, waiting for it to get up to 99% so that he could be the one that he still goes on about it. So he could get it over 100%. He messaged me and I didn't know, and I hadn't seen the message from Bill Bailey, and he messaged me, and so this happened quite late at night. I'll go to bed quite early. So I missed it, and in the morning I had loads of messages from like the editor and stuff, but also from my stepdad going, "You want to have a look at your crowdfund?" And I did, and it said that. In the end, it got like overfunded, which was really cool. Lots of people wanted to get involved. Old Packham wrote the foreword, where he spoke about his own suicide attempt, which then bird therapy. The first words are about my own, so it's a very powerful start of the book. Props to him to writing about it in his book as well, and then also in mine. And then they sent me a cover. It's very pretty. I was very excited when I received the first cover. I had nothing to do with it. I literally just got sent it one afternoon. Oh, here's your cover. Thankfully, I like it. And as Jim said, it's quite iconic. Is a cringy word, but it's certainly got a vibe to it. And then I was going to bring them all actually, but I had so many books to bring in for Jim that I couldn't fit any more in my bag. So I've got so it's actually now been published in quite a lot of countries. It's been published in France, it's been published in Germany, it's been published in Poland, it's been published in Slovakia. We've sold the rights to a couple of other countries. Has anyone watched the heavily violent series Gangs of London? No, I didn't think so. The company that produced that have recently been in contact to turn it into something on telly, which is a bit stupid. So we'll see where that goes. Yeah, judging by my experience of watching Gangs of London, I'm definitely not going to be fighting gangsters. Anyway, that was the proof that came out. You get a proof, which is basically an uncorrected version.